Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how our Pokémon SecOps teams enables business and really trying to automate ourselves out of a job. Just to give you a quick background, I only have a year in security. My history is in test and automation. I recently got my OSCP and then moved right over to security pretty quickly after that. I work closely with our dev and DevOps team, and I really try and automate myself out of a job. I don't want to be working anymore. Just real quick, this is going to be our agenda for the next hour. Just going to go over high level what the Pokémon story is, kind of where we came from, kind of dive into the problem that I'm facing every day, and then remove the people from that problem, automate it, and give you guys our solution. Lastly, I'll wrap it all up, think about how we can be building on this solution and always improving, and then I'll wrap it up with some key takeaways at the end. So some quick service intros that I'm going to be talking about. I assume that most of you know what these are, but I'll go into them very briefly. Lambdas are just serverless functions. They spin up, they run their code, and then they spin right back down. We've got DynamoDB, kind of, again, a serverless NoSQL database. Real simple and easy to use. And lastly, we have SQS. Just for me, it was exactly what it is. It was a queue system that I could send messages to and then pick up those messages from my Lambdas. So a little bit of background about Pokémon. About 2 years ago, all of our company was based off merchandising and the trading card games alone. Then Pokémon Go came out, and we saw an explosion of customers. We went from million users to over 300 million users, along with the 800 million downloads that we had for Pokémon Go. We just had to spin up a tech org, and we had to get going to be able to service them. Now, because of that, we had to build out a lot of infrastructure without security in mind. And so when our team came aboard, we accrued a lot of technical debt. And we had to start working through that and start working on building better as we go forward. Along with that, we have over 600 employees internally between our office in Bellevue and our office in London. We have over 250 vendors and over 100 different projects that we have going on internally. What I'm basically getting at is we have a lot going on, and I'm sure everybody else here does too. Our team, we now have a team of 10 now, thank God. When I say 10 though, I really mean 3. There's 3 engineers. There's myself, focused on cloud security. We have another engineer who's focused on our testing, penetration testing efforts, and our last engineer who's focused on our internal environments. So we don't have a lot of resources, and we need to figure out how to still do what we need to do while still having that limited bandwidth. So how do we do this? Exactly what I said. I came into it wanting to automate myself out of a job, wanting to automate everything that I can. If I have to do any action more than once, I'm going to look to automate it, because I just don't want to deal with that. I've got bigger and better problems that I could be focusing on. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2 big problems that pained me every single day. And that's managing access in 2 different ways. Now, this is bad. I hate doing this, and I don't think anybody likes doing this. It is manual, it is painful, really just, this bane of my existence. Now, there's 2 big pain points for me with this managing access that affected me in my day-to-day. One was our analytics pipeline, where we kind of do all of our log aggregation and all of our data aggregation to allow our internal employees work on that information. And the other is managing access to confidentiality projects. Now, the analytics pipeline, like I said, is its own AWS account. It manages all of our logs. So anything from login attempts from our customers, profile changes, literally everything that we can, we send to this AWS account. And I have to manage who gets access to that account and when. And that also means managing separation of personal information and non-personal information, because we don't necessarily want to give all that out to everybody who gets access to that account. Now, This was just a huge manual process, and it was painful. And here it is. What they'd have to do is they'd first have to go to Confluence and get the whole rundown about how they request access to this environment. Then they would open up a Jira InfoSec support ticket. It would come to me. I would push it back to them to make sure that they had the right approvers, because they never would. I would wait for those approvers to finally say yes. Then I would hop on over to our IT team, make sure that they get added to the correct Active Directory group that ties to our one login. And then I would go back to our Confluence page, manually add the person to the page that tracks who has access to the environment and for how long, and what Jira issue it's related to. Lastly, I would have to hopefully every day check that Confluence page and make sure that I am removing people as they expire. So if I was supposed to be removed from the data analytics account today, boy, I sure hope I checked. The other big problem that we had was these confidentiality projects. Now, we have a lot of confidentiality projects, which I mentioned. We have hundreds of them, and that's partly due to having a game studio, along with a bunch of other stuff. Now, access to this confidentiality projects are varied from levels 1 through 5. I could tell you what level 1 is. I could tell you what 5 is. Not really sure what the middle is, which is not a good system. We ended up having to be careful about who we talk to about these projects, because if I know I have access to Project Starship Troopers, and I'm not sure if John has access to Project Starship Troopers, there's no way for me to find out. So I end up talking about code names for code names, or I just end up talking about the project itself. And here is that process to get access to confidentiality projects right now. This is by far one of the more painful things I've seen. We have an email distribution list for each project. If I want access, I have to email that distribution saying, Jacob Bornemann is requesting level 5 access. That email will then respond back saying, I need approval from your VP. So I would have to go to my manager, who would have to go to his director, who would have to go to the VP to make sure that I can get access to this project. Once that's done, I email the distribution again with the confirmation. And by the way, these emails are going out to everybody on that list. Then that person would see that email. They would manually add me to whatever systems I would need, individually SharePoint, file share, the email distribution, so I get to see all those emails. And then I would get an email back saying, you've been added, we're all good. And then I was never removed. I have access to projects that have come and gone without any auditing or any expiration on those. I think I counted it out. There are 11 manual touch points in this process right now. And that is a lot. Not only is it a lot, but it also takes weeks to be able to get access to a project. And we need to shorten that up a ton. So the big challenge that I'm facing is that it's high touch. We have multiple projects that we're dealing with and multiple technologies. I mentioned SharePoint, there's Jira, Confluence, Active Directory. So how do we fix all that? Well, my first plan was to try and remove all the humans as I could. But I did it with certain goals in mind. Obviously, I wanted to save money. That's an easy sell. I can say that I'm working on a project that's going to save us money and time. I wanted it to reduce human error. I make mistakes. I make spelling mistakes, typing mistakes. People do all the time. I wanted to remove that as a possibility. Next, I wanted to be able to set and forget it. I have other things that I should be working on. I just want to throw up this system in AWS and know that it's working. If I'm feeling frisky, I can go check out on it later. But really, I don't want to care about its existence anymore. So another one was I wanted an audit trail. This is something that we don't have anymore, other than those manual Jira tickets. I wanted to know who had access to what. I wanted them to be able to measure who's been requesting access in the past 6 months, year, 2 years. We just needed some sort of visibility on these access requests. Next, I also wanted it to be serverless. I don't know if anybody went to reInvent last year, but they have really leaned into serverless. I think that's very important that we continue and move in that direction. It also will be able to scale for the number of projects that I mentioned earlier. Lastly, I wanted it to be fast to implement. I wanted to get it up there, I wanted to have it working, and then I never wanted to have it worry again. So here's the solution that I came up with. I can tell you right now, this is so much better. It has 2 manual touch points, and that is requesting access and the VP approving. That's it. What we have is the request comes in. That could come in through SharePoint. That could come in through email. That can come through Slack. It doesn't matter how that comes in. It'll all go straight to Demisto. And what Demisto will do is take that information saying, Jacob Bornemann is requesting level 5 access to Project Starship Troopers. It'll see that I am requesting that information for myself, and it'll bundle all that information for storage later. But then it starts to do some fun stuff. We've set up Demisto to be able to connect to our Active Directory, so it'll take a look at my name, it'll see who my manager is, who their manager is, and keep going until we find the VP. Once found, we pull their email from Active Directory, and we shoot them a message in email saying, Jacob Bornemann is requesting access to Starship Troopers. Would you like to approve? And because I know VPs don't have a lot of time, we've given them nice 2 pretty buttons, accept and deny. I don't want them to have to worry about writing an email or typing things out. I just want it to be quick, simple. From there, that information all gets pumped, assuming I'm approved, to an SQS Now, I have a Lambda sitting out there, just hanging out, listening to that SQS looking for any new messages. If it finds one, it'll pull out that information, and then it'll check to see if that project exists in the Dynamo database. If it doesn't, it'll create the table, create a special tag for it so I can query that table later, and then go ahead and insert that information, and it'll also assign it a TTL. This is something that we didn't have before, and something that we're trying to push on our entire company is access is not forever. It is ephemeral, and we need to be thinking about not only requesting access, but removal of access. So diving in a little bit more, here is the Demisto Playbook that we've set up. I don't know how familiar everybody is with Demisto, but they run playbooks, and each one of these is an event. That is anything from getting the username, getting the requester name, getting the justification, getting the project, all these bits of information it's grabbing and storing. And what it does is some pretty excellent stuff that sets me up for AWS. It'll dedupe any requests that come in. So if I make a request to a project or make a request to the data analytics account, it'll see if that request is already there, if I've been denied, or if it's still pending. And if it is, it'll shoot me an email saying, you've either been denied before, go talk to your manager about it. It'll tell you your request is still being processed. We're awaiting approval on the VP, or you'll get the you've been added email. Now, this has been so easy to integrate with that SQS as well. We do Demisto in our own AWS environment. We have our own InfoSec account that we've deployed Demisto, and having that connect up to the SQS was as easy as managing the policy for it. We do all of our deployments through CloudFormation, so once we set up those security groups and those policies that tie in, Demisto is talking to that SQS. So this Lambda, you can go to this link. I've put up a template of that script. This is just a script that pulls that information off of that SQS. It's in JSON. It's super easy. It's to ingest and process. It'll read, like I said, the database to see if that table exists. If not, it'll go ahead and insert it right in, and then give it a TTL as well. Again, auth of this is done through policies. It's done through security groups. So I don't have to worry about, can this Lambda access this at this time? So feel free to check out that script after. The other Lambda that I have that I haven't talked about yet, and probably the coolest Lambda that we have, is the one that goes from our Dynamo table to our Active Directory. Now, I talked a little bit about a TTL, but what I haven't talked about is how we manage all that access. So this Lambda will ingest the stream from the Dynamo table, and that means any inserts, any deletes gets filtered right to this Lambda, and it's just listening for that. Now, if it ever picks up an insert, it'll pull all that information, right? Name, project, level, and it'll establish a connection with Active Directory and go ahead and insert that person into the Active Directory group. The second Lambda that I have over there listens and watches for the TTL. Now I want to be able to expire people when their access is up, so it checks expiration for the next 30 days. And as it does that, it batches all that information, say 10 people are gonna expire in the next 30 days, takes all that and reshoots out the request to Demisto to re-up and see if they still need access. So instead of getting access forever, I now have access for 6-month time periods. I was able to also remove them from AD if that TTL stream, or if that TTL ever expires. I manage all that access, and I manage the connection to AD through Secrets Manager. It was really easy to set up and use. I put the auth in Secrets Manager, I decrypt it with a KMS key, and then I go ahead and decode that KMS key in my Lambda, and then push that information right to AD. Really easy to use. And I know I talked a lot about Dynamo. I was a big fan of the TTL especially. Being able to expire access and not have it indefinitely was the best thing that I could ever want. We can automatically remove access if it expires. We can verify that folks still need access to that. And from here, we can also surface access lists. Now, like I mentioned before, we have no idea who's requesting access to what projects or who's requesting access to the data analytics account. Now, with this Dynamo table, I can find an easy location to present that information, maybe in a S3 bucket that folks can go get access to and get a nice view of who has access to what. That way, I'm no longer in a situation where I'm questioning who has access, or I'm talking to folks who I think have access to the data analytics account when they really don't. Evolution's pretty great. This was our process before. Like I said, 11 manual touch points. It would take weeks and maybe more if folks were out of the office to request access to this kind of stuff. We had no auditing. We had no visibility. We had thousands and thousands of emails. And like the best example I have of this is Sword and Shield was recently announced. When that came out, when that announcement came, everybody in the company requests access to that project. That turned from 600 employees to 1,800 emails in a week. And then that 2-3 people have to manage all that access at once, and they would just get blocked up. We've turned that into this. Now we have 2 touch points. We know exactly who has access to what and when they have access to it. This process takes as long as it takes for the VP to click that approve button. From there, maybe 30 seconds more, but that's a huge difference on, 2 weeks. Lastly, we audit the list. We make sure that people are getting removed as they need to, their access is expiring, and then if they need to re-up, are able to provide the justification for it. Next steps. Where do we go from here? I have a lot of cool ideas about where I can reuse this system. Like I said, I always want to be growing. I always want to be changing. And one of the big things that I want to be able to apply this for is SSH key management. The way that we do it right now is, again, devs make a manual Jira ticket saying I'm making a change to production at this time. What I'd like to do is to have Demisto listening on that change ticket, pull all that information, see who's requesting it, make sure that there's somebody who can make the change, and then Slack them an SSH key for the production environment. And have that SSH key will only be good for 15 minutes. And as soon as they use it, it'll be removed from that production account. That'll give us better auditing and better management of who has access to our production environments and when. Another good thing to use this for is any access to tools. We manage all of our tools through one login, and we manage them all through Active Directory. If we were able to automate provisioning access to those tools, we can get people in our company working on the things that they need to so much faster. Another use case, or building up off of this, is using our SIM dashboard. Now, we found that our security team uses our SIM probably the least out of everybody. We have our game studio who uses it more, our DevOps team who uses it more, and we're starting to kind of spread that out to the rest of the company. Instead of having these people, our business managers or our folks who are kind of monitoring this access, we can just shoot them over a dashboard in our SIM that says, these folks have been requesting access at this time. This is kind of the trends over time, and we can see, oh man, Keith's been requesting a lot of access lately. What's been going on with him? Or we can see we had a huge spike in access requests to our data analytics account. What's been going on? Has there been customer complaints? Has there been faulty AWS services? We'll be able to kind of audit and kind of drive that data-driven, make those data-driven decisions. And lastly, more audit and compliance, because that's everybody's favorite thing. I want to be able to generate reports about who's been requesting access in the past 6 months, past year. I want to give the visibility to the people who need it, and making sure that people are able to talk to the right people, remove code names for code names, and provide auditors proof that they have been removed from these systems when they said they are. Why did I do all this? This is a lot of work just to be able to manage access faster. At the end of the day, we're a small team. We have a huge problem. I believe that humans make mistakes all the time, and I want to be able to remove them. And manual processes suck. It's a problem that doesn't need to be there. I've got better things to be working on. You've got better things to be working on. We need to be able to automate everything that we can. But more importantly, it lets me do this. I want to give a shout out to my team, though. Without them, Sean, Mike, Michelle, Cotton, Nick, Keith, and John, I wouldn't be able to do this every day at work now. Key takeaways from this talk. If you get nothing else, hopefully you get one of these. You really need to lean into automating yourself out of a job. There will always be work to do. There's always new landscape to be working on. If you drive this point home, you'll always be able to stay ahead of that work. Not everything will be able to be automated, but this will help get you there to be able to manage that workload. AWS has allowed me to build out almost anything that I can dream of. I believe that we as security professionals need to lean into the cloud. I think that's the way the technology is moving. I believe that that's what everybody else, all of our attackers are using as well, so why don't we use that same technology? And I always want to be evolving. I never want to get stuck. Technology changes all the time. I don't want to stay static. I want to keep leaning forward and keep pushing forward. Thank you.